Hello, everybody. I see at least one person in chat, Daka Flacka Flame. There's Quindy, who I assume will tell me if there is some kind of audio visual problem. I mean, other than this nonsense, which does give me gives you an improved look at painting the miniatures. Well, it gives me an improved look too, because I now have a much bigger monitor, so I can see chat better, and I can see what I'm doing better. And hopefully that is good for everyone. Daka Flocka Flame says everything looks and sounds good. So I will switch over to the other view and attempt to remember to put on all of my lamps this time, which I did not last week. Definitely putting these on. I didn't put my gray paper down. If the focus starts being problematic, I will look into that. I have it nearby. So the past couple of weeks, I've been working on this guy, which is an owlbear inspired by the owlbear in the D&D movie, which I took to be a combo of a snowy owl and a polar bear. And I realized that I was not done after the other show, and apart from the base, which is very much not done. Hey, Wester Cat. Because I never put the stripy markings on. But I think I would like to work on something else today, so we will swivel back around to that. There are some, I put them on my shelf where I can see. So it's a shelf at roughly eye level, and this is something I recommend doing if you can. Put your works in progress there. If you're working on something long term, like, not a speed paint piece that you're dropping on the table tonight, but if you're working on a contest entry for the MSB Open or something like that, this is a great way to help yourself start seeing things you could improve or things you might have missed. So I had it on my shelf that's roughly eye level, and I pass by that shelf a few times a day. Maybe sometimes more than a few. Sometimes I'm not looking at the figures though, but sometimes I'll just stop and look at the figures. So I'm seeing them in regular room light, and I'm seeing them when I'm in viewer mode rather than painter mode, because your brain is kind of operating a little bit differently in those two situations, which is why you do miss stuff. And I realized that there were definitely things I didn't 100% like, things that looked different than I had hoped away from the desk. Oh, and now I'm seeing that I also did not paint the skin membrane, which the D&D owlbear doesn't have, but mine does, so clearly I have to address that. So I'm thinking I'll probably do what I usually do, and I'll kind of finish it up the way it is now. And then on a future episode, and we're going to start doing those episodes soon, because ReaperCon approaches faster than some of us believe. I'm some of us. Where I take things that I've worked on previously and use them as an example of here's the critique that you would get, and this is what it would look like if you put the critique into action. Because not everybody wants to go home and rework their miniatures, or like I like to keep most of my contest miniatures the way they are. They mark a point in time of my painting ability. They mark an event that I went to. So usually I don't. Every now and then I have some that I'm like, oh, what was I thinking? I get home and I'm like, I didn't actually finish that, and I would have, if I'd had more time, I would have figured this out on my own and changed this. But most of the time, I just leave them as kind of a mark of where they are. And if you've done something that you really like how it turned out, even if you got suggestions for how to make it better, and this is true if you're posting online or whatever as well, you may not want to, take the risk of messing with it and losing the stuff that you did like. So I like to try to do that on some miniatures so that you get a chance to kind of see a real, like, before and after without having to risk your own figures. Because otherwise it's kind of, if you take, this figure, like, say you're at the MSP Open and you got a bronze and you're hoping one day to get a silver, we might say, okay, here's a silver piece and here's some bronze pieces and here's what's different between them. But they're going to be different subjects, different color schemes. And for those of us who aren't great at visualization, which is definitely me, it can be really hard to, like, make that concrete what those differences are. So it helps a lot to look at, it's like one of those makeover shows. You want the makeover on the same person so that you can see the before and after kind of thing. So I like to do that, and I have not done that for a while, and that actually I think will benefit greatly from the new camera setup, because you might actually be able to see more of the stuff I'm talking about. So I wasn't planning on working on the owlbear today in any event. My original plan had been to try to do some sculpting, but I have some wrist and finger problems, and like the day after I said I was going to try doing some converting and sculpting on the next show, they cropped up. So I've been kind of babying my dominant hand, which was the one that was complaining the most. And I think that me trying to use clippers or something is a bad plan right now. This is one reason I don't do a lot of conversion, and it's especially etching type things, or where I have to hold a small tool and use firm pressure. That's something that I find very painful to do. So I have like one piece I did a million years ago, and then I'm like, well, that really sucked. So I will work more with wet putty. That doesn't require the same kind of thing as trying to etch or sculpt dried, cured putty or Fimo or whatever thing. Anyway, so what am I doing? And this is one of the Rocky the Reds. Do I remember this one's name? I emphatically do not. But I bet Quindy can find it for us, because Quindy is magic like that. I love his little cranky vibe. I had a cat that was super cranky, and eventually I guess it's like Stockholm syndrome, and I just decided it was cute so that I could live with it. No, I'm kidding. He was cute. I like the cranky cute. And so does Ron. That's why we have stuff like Rocky. But anyway, so last night I was like kind of thinking, well, what could I do? And I was trying to think of other things that sort of tied in with the D&D movie, which was part of what I wanted to sculpt, was something that might tie in with that. And I came up with a few ideas, but I wasn't like, super excited. And then I woke up this morning. Well, I didn't wake up this morning. Like about 2 hours before the show, I was like, oh, I could do X. Well, the first thing I thought I could do, I would have to probably buy something for, which there was not time to do that. But the second thing I thought of was this guy. But not just this guy as the Easter Dragon. Because I have long maintained, wouldn't it make more sense? Doesn't an Easter Dragon make more sense than an Easter Bunny? Because, dragons do lay eggs, and they're kind of magical, so they could get around and deposit these eggs. So I always make jokes about the Easter Dragon. And I am apparently not the only one, because I did some web searches for inspiration, and I'm not going to show you any of those because they're not those royalty-free sites that I usually look at. This was just general Google stuff, so those pictures belong to people, and they are not mine to share. But if you'd like to do your own Google search for Easter Dragon, you will see some super fun, cool examples. But instead, what I'm going to talk about more while this guy dries, about pastel color schemes. Now, this may be a thing that a lot of you haven't painted, and you feel like you don't want to paint. It doesn't really come up that often in miniature painting, but some of the challenges that it presents do come up. So I think it's worth doing, on the offhand chance also that anyone wants to do a pastel color scheme. I'm shaking the camera again. I apologize. Have we gotten that thing I said I would get? No. Hey, green users. But I told Scheming Rocky. This is Scheming Rocky, and his SKU number is 77920. If you're watching on Twitch, you can find the link in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, just go to reaperminiatures.com. reapermini.com. And look for that number. Or just type in Rocky the Red. And you'll see 5. Is the brush holder one out yet? You'll see at least 5, maybe 6. And he's in different positions doing different things. But I had this guy like washed and prepped up. And then I had the one where he's doing the kitty cat butt wiggle, which I thought about. And I haven't glued the wings on that one because I think it will be hard to paint. So I thought this would be more fun to paint the way I want to paint now, because the wings are attached and can be attached during painting. So what are pastels? And this is going to be one of the, colors. There's a personal element to color. There's a relative element to color. But in general, if you look at, these colors on the outer edge of the color wheel, they are very saturated. They're intense colors, like red is red. And that is not pastel. So pastel is two things as a rule. And if you look at this inner circle, this is where white has been added to each of these colors and they start becoming more pastel. So pastel is partly its lower saturation, but also there's a value element where, that's low saturation, but that's not a pastel. Like, regardless of how, where you draw your personal line, I think no one draws it there. But around here, these would be the pastel colors. So this is where the challenge comes in, and the same challenge presents with if you're trying to paint a dark, evil, brooding miniature, and you're painting all your colors here, or you're trying to paint the fair maiden stereotype princess, and all your values are here. You lack contrast, and that would be one of the comments that you would get in something like the MSP Open if you ask an instructor for feedback. So the challenge is, how do you paint a ninja that's, hiding in the shadows and wearing black and have contrast? Because you're lacking two kinds of contrast. You're lacking the value contrast, but you're also lacking, like, saturation is another kind of contrast that is very effective to the human eye. The thieves that Ron continually asks me to paint have been my personal challenge in here, because they're, he wants them to be dark and desaturated and brown and gray and stuff like that. So they're all over here. How do I make it interesting to look at? And I would not actually say that I've entirely cracked that nut, but it's something to keep in mind. So I will show you a watercolor thing that I painted the other day. So what I started out aiming to paint here was how you can, when you paint white, you can use color. Like, it doesn't have to be shades of gray or whatever. You can use stronger colors. So this guy is a white that's, gray. There's like a little bit of brown in there, but this is not a colorful white. If you look at, I think pet portraits are a good thing to look. If you search for like oil painting pet portraits or something, you'll find that the portrait artists that paint like white cats and black dogs and stuff, they end up putting a lot of color in the paint that they use to add interest and variation. Because to keep the cat or whatever white, you got to have a lot of it has to be very light in value. It has to be white. So they add variations of color like this to make it more interesting to look at. And then the reverse for the black dog, where they add, like some blue or greens or whatever, and the reflection areas of the fur, so that it still stays darker, but there's something to keep your interest. So these would be examples of pastels. This is getting a little on the darker side to call something a pastel, and this is getting a little on the desaturated side to call something a pastel. But overall, it would fit the brief of a pastel painting, I think. But even here, like, this is pretty dark. I went over this like 5 or 6 times trying to get it as dark as I could. I could probably even darken the leaves up. If I darkened the background, this flower would start looking whiter and whiter because of that contrast. So even though if you want to paint a fair maiden, you're still going to have some areas where things are obscured from the light and they should be darker. If you want to paint a ninja or a thief or whatever, like a demon that's black and red, there should still be areas that are lighter, either because they're reflecting light or just for interest. Like, you'd make the demon horns light gray or something to add a little bit of interest. So that's the idea. I would like to put this somewhere far away from the painting, because the thing about watercolor is it doesn't dry the way acrylic does. Val Under the Red says, speaking of that, what if you used artist pastels to highlight a large model? So I have heard of, I think it was Shoshi Bauer. She has a Twitch channel. I think it's just Shoshi or Shoshi's Minis. Years ago, she used, it kind of looked like an eyeshadow palette. So they call it pan pastels. And if you search for pan pastels, you will find stuff. You will find very expensive stuff. So it's in like a little cake. It's pressed together in a little cake instead of being loose. which I guess the pastels you're holding kind of are, but it's designed for you to rub on a brush and then put it on paper, really, but you could put it on miniatures. So she was using those kind of things to, I think she did like the base in acrylics, and then she would add like color variation, shadows, and stuff. I don't know if she did highlights. I cannot remember. This was some years ago with the pastels. There's certainly an option for weathering, but even there, what the problem is nothing makes them stick. So you can come back and just rub it all off. So if it's a miniature that's going to have any contact, weathering will often work because well, let's get this guy back because he would make more sense. I want to put mud on his feet because he's been rushing through mud. So I like put some brown weathering powder or pastel, ground up pastel sticks or something on his feet. It's probably not going to get handled that much and it would probably be okay. You can kind of fix it, like you can use a spray fixative, but some of it'll blow away in the process of that. The weathering powders that you can buy have something in them. They have some kind of adhesive somehow. Like I've done tests and I plan to do more tests, but I've ground up pastels and like Conte sticks. And I have used those for weathering, but generally in places like I'm saying where it's not going to get much contact so it doesn't get rubbed off. But I did a test like on more like a cloak or something like this where I could rub it, and I have a weathering powder set that I got at Hobbytown like a million years ago from some guy's little garage shop. And then I had some of the secret weapon weathering powders, and then I had some pastels that I ground up. And when I tested, the pastels rubbed off way easier than the weathering powders. So can you do it? Yeah. Can you do it in every situation? I don't know. You'd probably want to test. You'd want to test if you can get enough coverage that if you go over it with a spray fixative, that it stays. Because once you spray fixative, it's probably fine to work on top of it. And in fact, they may stick better to something like dull coat. A matte spray has, the matting agents add a little tooth to stuff that I don't recommend it like as the first coat because things stick, but they don't stick as well as they stick to primer, even directly to plastic, like on stuff like bones. And that I did test. Because people often, when bones first came out, that was a big suggestion was, well, just spray them with dull coat instead of primer and it'll be fine. And it's like, does the paint apply? Sure. Does the paint stay as well as if you didn't do that? It does not in my testing. But once you've got paint on there and you're working over it, that's a good way to, from what, like you kind of save, it's like you press save on what you've already done because it's also easier to rub, if you make a boo-boo, it's easier to rub off. So a lot of people will do like dull coat and then do their freehand. So everything else is done and they're just doing the freehand and they know they might make mistakes. So they spray. And then if they make a mistake, it's easier to rub it off if you get it. Well, the paint's pretty, before the paint sat for very long. But I think it would work for pastels and it does help fix weathering powder. Like weathering powder stick better, but they're not like, it's not super glue. They're not there forever. There are also people using, so you might see weathering pencils, and I'm pretty sure those are just watercolor pencils. So you might, if you already have some of those. Quindy also shared the link to, there's a version of this guy where he's holding his little feet out, so you can put your brush on there, and that's just super awesome and cool. Hi, Moria Louisa. Thank you. So, and I do not recommend using hairspray as a fixative. At least not without testing. It's the kind of thing that, like, why? If you can afford the couple dollars extra to buy the real thing, buy the real thing. So, I made the decision to paint this guy pastels, and then what? So, I can't show you pictures of the things I looked at, but I found this webpage. And first I was like, oh, do they have permission to use Shutterstock you know, Shutterstock photos. And then I'm like, oh, well, it is Shutterstock, so I guess they do. So they're talking about doing a design thing more like a room, or maybe, I think they talked about logos or something like that. But with a logo, you still want some contrast. So the pictures themselves, you'll notice that they've taken these colors out of, have higher contrast. Like their greens go darker than this. The blues go darker than that. It's just the overall impression. So these are examples of pastel colors. It's just partly why I'm doing this, so I don't just have to mix a bunch of boring colors. That is like so desaturated, I'm not even sure I would count that as pastel. Even that one's along the edge. That one's definitely pastel. But it's the same thing with these flowers. So yeah, those pinks are in these flowers, but there are also like deeper, darker pinks. And I would include like less of those on something I wanted to look super pastel, but I would still include some of those. So those are the kind of colors. I picked out some colors. I think I've got kind of this, not that one though, but also blue and yellow. And then the other thing I was thinking about when I was picking out my colors is that I want to kind of do color transitions. And I'm going to have to think about which color I transition to which. So if I transition the pink to the green or vice versa, those are complementary colors. You mix complementary colors together, you get brown or gray. So where those meet aren't going to look very pastel or pretty. So what would probably work better is if I transition the pink to the yellow, then I'm going to get like a peach where they meet. And if I transition the green or teal to purple, it's going to be like a bluey kind of color, I think. Usually when I mix teal and purple together, that's what I get. So I picked out a bunch of colors. I will confess that these are not all. I usually try to only pick out colors that are in production. And I had this idea very last minute. So these do not necessarily fulfill that brief. So this is darker and more saturated than a pastel. This is something that I will adjust as necessary for the shadows. This, same thing. But that's kind of like the color range I'm going to work with. And then I pulled out a few other colors for shadows and highlights. And also some grays. So if I decide that, you know, like if I wanted to use this, and I'll just do this in this little cup real quick. I don't want to mix on my palette because if I end up like not using this color, I will forget that I didn't use that color. So I want to keep it about that value, say, because I am trying to make this more of a shadow area. So let me grab, this is probably a little too dark, but we'll see. So this is, I'm using the pure neutral grays, the ones I normally tell you I don't like to use. Because in this case, I don't want them to shift the color at all. I mean, I want them to shift the color, but I want them to shift the color in terms of making it duller, not making it, you know, more brown or more blue or whatever. So, sample paper. So this fits in more with what a pastel color would look like. That's not a pastel, but if I'm using that just in like some shadow areas of a pastel, that's going to work better than this original color. And I can gray it out even a little more if I think that's too much. So this is where I started, which is much more saturated. Not at all what I would call a pastel. And this is closer to like a dusty rose kind of a color, which is, you know, a light dusty rose is totally a pastel color. And yeah, I think if I add even more gray, it gets closer to the idea that would work to add a little bit of a shadow to like one of these. So that is my theory anyway. I'm doing this like, you know, cooking challenge show style where I did not test any of this theory in advance. And I'm going to do it on this guy. And I was trying to think about where to paint what. Because I feel like I probably have to paint his little tummy first because that's going to be hard to reach later. And I believe I had decided that I would paint like pink to yellow on the horns and the spinities and then that. So I might actually need to use that pink I just said I didn't want. This is maybe on the edge of being a little saturated for a pink. This one is in production. This is blush pink. But I need a shadow color to get down, you know, under his tongue. So I'm going to grab that Violet Rose and the gray and add a bit of that to make my shadow color. And then to make sure it does go with this, I'll add that. And this is a big, so I painted him white, and that's just white paint. It's not primer because this is a Bones Classic, and I am of the school of painting directly on a Bones Classic. But I painted him white because these are the kind of colors that are going to look truer, quicker over white, especially since my goal is really to do some wet blending here. And I may still have to do, you know, more than one pass, but this should hopefully help the colors retain their brilliance. I don't know how I would put that. All right, so I think I do also need, where am I? I think I need to gray this down just a little. Although it's not super tough to desaturate colors later. You know, to paint something and then decide it's too saturated, it's easy to do glazes or washes that will tone down something that's a little too in your face. Hello, gel tip. So today I'm working on the Scheming Rocky. He does look like he's kind of got a plan, and we're all a little worried about the plan. So that's getting a little more pastel-y. And then is my white too chunky? Nope. Although I have highlight white or pinks, so I don't know why I'm doing that. Because I have Amaryllis Pink, which may have been, I think this was a Reaper color. It's very close. We're going to put that one down. So you don't have to worry about the fact that you can't get that one. You can get Shellin Blush. This is one of the Pathfinder colors. And when I was pulling out colors, I noticed that there are actually a fair amount of Pathfinder colors that fit with the, at least starts to be pastel brief. They have a lot of really great purple and pink and colors like that. But then I also wanted to do some yellows. See, now this is, I'm not sure I would even call that pastel because that's like a really punchy yellow. So we're going to put that to the side. This would be the equivalent value, but as a pastel. This is yellow mold, which I love for mixing highlights on lots of things. Yep, Valander got it. Mold yellow is more pastel. But I need something a little darker as well. So I think this, so I kind of like, do I want to go kind of more peach? No, I think maybe I do want to go more peachy. Now that I'm here, but then it's not as yellow. Because then the other thing I was going to try is I grabbed some browns that aren't at all pastel, but like if we do that gray trick, what happens? Can I make a darker yellow that still kind of feels pastel? Let's find out. So what was that one? That was Rich Leather, which is a yellowy brown. That is too light to be a shadow, I think. So let's try again with that, at least some of that other gray that I put too much pink in. Stormy gray. I'm very bad about getting my mixing colors from this. If you get it from the side, you don't contaminate it as much. And I am like very, very bad at that. Which I will need to practice because I'm about to do an oil painting class where it is way more important. So this I don't know that I'm loving. That's a bit barfy to be a pastel. So I think that this original color, where it's this lighter gray, works. And if we had to make it darker still, wasn't confident about the whole complement idea, because complements do tend to darken colors a lot too, but let's give it a shot. So purple is the complement of yellow. This is probably too light. Nope, that's the wrong one. That could work. All right. I have a swirly little cat down here, so if you hear the cries of sadness, it is a cat that is not at all sad. Hi. Do you need your snuggles? Is that what you're telling me? All right, so let's do it this way. This is also very much pastel color, amethyst purple, and a nice highlight color for purples. In general, when I say pastels, if you think about highlight colors, a lot of times they're gonna fit the bill. So I think I need a darker purple though. So I can choose either, this is Ghoul Violet from Pathfinder, which is a blue purple, and the Wild Violet is a red purple. And choices. Too many. I used a red purple the first time and it kind of worked, so let's do that. But it may be that I kind of end up doing the pink as the shade and the purple as the highlight, essentially. I mean, the yellow is the highlight. But we'll find out, I guess. I don't know what I'm doing. So yes, that is more pastel as a shadow. Then we'll have to like mix it in between, because that's a big jump. It's not yellowy enough though. Val under the red, I often use yellow mold as peak highlights on more saturated yellows. Gel Chip just got yellow mold today. Prepare for fun. I like it in lots of things. Hello. I didn't want to squeeze right next to it because sometimes you can get surprised. Unpleasantly surprised when you've had a stuck paint and you start squeezing. Like that. See, I did it to myself. I told myself not to do it, and then I did it. But that is definitely turning into a nice, slightly darker pastel yellow. We may even need just a little. Make a bit more peach. Because you do have to keep color in there. It's like you can't go too desaturated, too tan or brown or whatever. Pastel blues are kind of difficult to me. They almost have to be grayed out rather than whited out, or they just look like bright blues. I think if you start with a blue that I had some blues out. So if you start with a blue like this and you just start adding white, you'll get something like that. If you have something kind of in between these and then you start adding white, it might work a bit better. I don't think it's bad to have a little bit of saturation in the highlight colors, because otherwise they do get kind of boring. So, I mean, I'm sure there's going to end up being white on here. Why don't I, in fact, get a fresh bit of white for when necessary? But I probably want to try to have the amount of white fairly low percentage. All right. So, let's see what I can do. If the sad cat lets me. What is the sad cat doing? Okay, she thought she was trapped. She's not trapped. She's not necessarily a genius. Because really, I should probably be blending within each of these little things. Let's get a smaller brush. Do a little more proof of concept here. And this is just a first pass. Like, I'm going to be able to tune up anything that I don't love here. And, you know, increase highlights or add more shadows or whatever. But as a proof of concept, I think it's working. little bit of a pastel-y vibe going on. Oh, he's not close enough to the camera. I'm sorry. It's almost a little too bright. That yellow is still a little more intense than I realized. I don't want to make it too light though. All right, we'll get the purple. So this is the deal with colors being relative. I mean, on here, it doesn't look that intense, but on the little dude, it started looking intense. Let's do the bottom one because that would make more sense. And that one's going to be a little more challenging just from the point of view of reaching everything. I think the saturation on my camera is a little bumped up, at least on the monitor that I'm looking at. It looks a little more intense than it looks to me. I mean, it's still, you know, it's... The other thing I looked at for color ideas is there's an Instagram page. Oh, do I remember what it's called? Movie palette, cinema palette, something like that. If I stop painting for a minute, I will look it up and tell you. But they'll take movie scenes and kind of the way that those pictures I was showing you pulled out the main colors from the pictures to kind of suggest some color schemes. They do that with movie scenes so that you can see kind of the dominant colors that were used in the movie scene. Which, you know, can really, the colors that they're choosing really make a lot of the mood in movie scenes sometimes. So it's interesting to see someone kind of pull back the curtain and show you how that's working. But because the Barbie movie trailer got posted this weekend, they had several shots from that movie that they pulled out with the pastel color schemes. So these colors that have a lot of white in them tend to be more opaque, so they can be more challenging. If you have trouble with highlights being streaky and chalky, it can sometimes be because those colors are more opaque, and you need to make sure that sometimes you'll need to add a little water or medium or something to make them play nice. But then sometimes it can be the opposite. There are people who thin a little too much and they start getting a chalky thing because there's not enough pigment. So this is at the tacky stage where I shouldn't be touching it, is why I stopped touching it. And here I did something bizarro because I need to pick which direction the light color is going in, and it should be the opposite because I think I like that top scale. So, no, it's still tacky. When that is not tacky, I will redo it. But I will do under his chin. And this is, this is an area that's a recess. It's in shadow. We don't really want people going, oh, let me look at the underside of his chin. So this is where I am likely to use slightly darker colors or gray the colors out even more. Like even less saturation, so they're darker but less saturation. If I didn't keep mucking up my grays, that would be great. And that's just going to need to sit a minute before it gets another coat. I'm not doing a very good job of staying in frame today, am I? All right. That is not quite dry. But I will come over here. And these are going to be harder. These might have to be layering. the spinities. And really, I'm not gonna paint those until later, because I think the other stuff I'm doing, I'll have to do some wet blending on the body parts, and that's likely to get me to mess this up. But I will just lay in a bit of this pink color as a starting point, and it will help me judge how well this is going to look with the other colors. I'm not going to worry about the horns, because really I want those to be more of the yellow, I think. Do I know what I'm doing? I really, really do not. Did I mix enough of this pink? I really, really did not. But I will just mix more then. Because even this is a little intense, I think. But that's probably partly because so much of him is white at this point still. If he was still the gray color that he is in the plastic, this pink would look far more pastel, I imagine. Actually going to get the other brush. So even, if I was planning to wet blend, this still wouldn't be a terrible thing. Like, to have a foundation of a color can help you get better coverage. Or you can kind of do both your colors with a really rough join in between them, and then wet blend on top to make the transition smoother. And then you would only have to do one layering of wet blending probably, where I will probably have to do two on some parts just for coverage. Quindy said colorpalette.cinema is not supposed to be a link. Twitch. Yeah, so that's what it's called. Colorpalette.cinema. It's a cool site. I recommend it. It's very interesting to see what they're doing with movie scenes in color. And they don't just do pastel Barbie films, they do all kinds of films. So don't worry about that that it's not going to be movies you're interested in. Although I'm intrigued by what I saw in the Barbie trailer. It looks like they're going to explore some things. I think it looks like Barbie and Ken come to our reality. So they start out in a very Barbie world. It's a very Barbie world. And then it looks like they come to our world, but I guess we'll find out. So that even that original version of the blush pink seemed a little too bright to me. Because in person, it doesn't look as bright as it's looking on my screen, the tummy parts, like as saturated. But it is looking more saturated than I think it should. So I'm going to tone some stuff down. And I can see that this pink is very slightly different than the first one I mixed, but it's not so different that I think it stands out. And this is one of those things where I advise people to kind of not stress out as much as they sometimes do about color mixing. Because years ago I saw a thread of somebody who they'd like painted the main body of something, and then they run out of paint before they got to the legs, and they were like freaking out about how it wasn't going to match. And it's like, okay, but really our legs are not necessarily the exact same color as our arms and our faces and whatever, so that's okay. And probably, if the miniature doesn't have its arm right next to its leg, no one's going to notice, because they can't change how it's standing. I mean, I guess you can on a 3D miniature now, but a 3D miniature isn't painted. So, Okay, I guess they can kind of do that now, even, can't they? I'm going to pretend they can't. Because I don't want to stop doing this. I like doing this. I don't want to be replaced by the machines. Hopefully it's a little more pastel. But I'm still going a little too dark, I think. Come in with that lighter pink. Maybe I need to lighten this one just a little. But the idea that where the two colors join, looking pretty harmonious, does seem to be working out, I think. Whereas if I was trying to do pink and pale green, maybe I'll test on paper in a minute. And we'll find out how horrible that would likely be. I can come back and fix that later, unless I decide that this is like a tabletop miniature and I don't need to do that. Alright, so now let's go the correct direction with this. So it stops looking weird. I got confused because, you know, we normally make things that are higher up lighter in value, or things that protrude, so it worked on that. And then I made this one had a different structure, and it did not work on that. And then I got the same thing going on here. Make the top pinker. And really no one's going to see in there, so I'm not going to sweat it too much. But I probably do need some of this darker color for the line in between these two. Just because I'm painting pastel doesn't mean I still don't need some lining and definition. I may even need those more because the values of everything that I'm going to be painting are going to be pretty similar. Alright, now what did I say? I was gonna, this has to, no, is it dry enough? We're gonna say it's dry enough. I almost did it the reverse way again. I'm very easily distracted. But I believe I said I was going to do the body parts more of a like teal to purple transition. Which, if I were smart, I would test on paper, but I'm probably not smart, so I don't think I'm going to do that. I think that I've painted similar enough colors to be reasonably certain that's going to work. This yellow just still seems very yellow. It's kind of surprising. Because it is really not an intense yellow in a normal context of painting. Or even on my palette. But I think it's gonna need a little more purple chilling it out. And then since that darkens it, we'll add a little bit of that wonderful yellow mold. All right. So I said teal to purple. I want purple to teal. I think the light purples are more conveniently pre-mixed, so I'm going to go with that. I don't, that may be a little too saturated. We'll see. I did shake these paints off camera, as I usually do. I don't think that I'm going to need to... I'll put a little bit over here in case I need some sharp bite, but I don't think that I will. Need to go that dark. Maybe just a hair. I wasn't going to add any blue, but I'm now debating whether to have some blue in the wings. I mean, the blue in teal, but you know what I mean. Blue. I wasn't going to necessarily do any blue. Not because I mean, I just don't like blue, really. Well, okay, that is strong. Blue is not one of my favorite colors, and I also was like, maybe he shouldn't be entirely rainbow, but now I'm feeling like he should be kind of rainbow. Because I did a colorful rainbow dragon for you all when I was testing the super washes, a very little dragon, and that was fun. So this will be kind of like the less saturated version of that. Apparently I still had some pink on my brush, but that's okay. That's just going to desaturate it, so that is a-okay. I did not bring over a lighter blue or a lighter teal. I did bring this, which is a nice, so it's Vampire Pallor, has a little bit of green in it. I'm not sure how well it's showing up on camera, but it would kind of be like if I'm doing what I'm doing here anyway, just with a lot of white. And then this part's going to be interesting because he does, so there's a scale texture there. They're fairly large scales. I am going to want to pick those out. I have elected to wait until later to decide whether I want them to, like, all the scales are going to be purple or all the scales are going to be teal, or if I'm going to shift with where I do the shifts over, like with the wet blending, and just maintain that. Probably need to mix a little bit of that one. And then I kind of want to have some of the bluer purple as an option. But yeah, I think all of these need to be toned down a little to be more accurately pastel. I find I use a lot of paint wet blending, so I'm trying to err on the side of mixing more than I need rather than less. This one seems a little thick. I don't know if you can see it on palette cam. Let's try. No, that's not just palette cam. Well, I thought I had one that was just palette cam, but now I don't know that I do. Let me look here. There. So I don't know if you can see as I run the brush through that little wake behind it isn't filling in immediately. And to me, that's a paint that's a little too thick. That's a paint that could add some texture to my surface. So that's when I'm going to add water for consistency rather than transparency. So because I'm using some of that purple on that, I might need more of that one. And those lighter grays have white in them too, so they're also more likely to be a little goopy. That is today's forum question. Is there a color you avoid? Nothing looks yellow on my screen. I just tuned in. Wait, some bottles look yellow. But these are very pale yellows. So this one, I continued to desaturate it because on the miniature, it was looking... Oh, gotta go back to this view. On the miniature, it was looking more yellow than I expected. I'm not getting as much as of a kind of orange in betweeny color as I had expected when I proposed this notion. I mean, that said, the color is not as in your face as it appears on my screen, but it is a little. I think maybe I just gotta mix those two together. I think it needs to be a little more of a peach than a yellow, perhaps. This is dry now, so I can go back to trying to put it in the correct orientation. And here I probably want even like a darker peach because it is still, so the belly scale is rolling away from the light. So I don't want to be using this. That's a highlight color. Even though this is pastel and I'm trying to make everything light, I also want to still use the paint to bring out the forms. And that's the challenge with painting something where thematically you want it to be super dark or, you know, fairly pale, is you still need some contrast to create the shapes. That's what we're doing with shadow and highlight contrast, is making the shapes look more 3D because they don't look 3D enough with our puny light sources. This isn't quite light enough to look pastel. So this, as I expected, this is the juggling act part of this exercise. It's less about the transitions and more about the doing the contrast thing. So this is why, even if you have no desire to paint pastels, the challenge that I'm facing here is the same one as painting a dark thief or ninja or a black and red demon thingy. It's the getting getting contrast, bringing out the forms, even if most of your main colors are, clustered more closely together in value than they would be on kind of a general miniature. Let's see. So he is large enough that natural lighting is going to do some natural shading. Certainly a lot more than would occur on a person miniature. So while I want it to be dark under here, I don't need to be like crazy. And I probably want to bring in at least a little hint of like peach or yellow or something like that, since that is the kind of vibe I'm going with on this side. I mean, on this area of the body. I think that's a little better. It's still a bit intense, but if I had to, I could, I mean, at the end, I can take white and do a glaze over the whole thing and desaturate it. Doing an overall light glaze is not the easiest thing going, but it certainly can be done. I don't know if I go out of my way to avoid painting blue at all, but it's kind of, it's just not the first color I'm going to think of if I'm painting something. Now, desaturate, I get around this by, like this is the blue I don't want to paint very much. I'm happy to paint that. Happy to paint kind of like that. So if you make it just a little green or a little purple or a little desaturated, then I'm okay. It's like blue that I'm not super into. And like yellow's not my favorite color, but it doesn't come up a lot in painting. Like there's not, except for like highlights and stuff, but it's rare that I'm like, and this thing should be yellow. Like this is a rare moment where I said this thing should be yellow. All right, let's try a little bit with this. Yeah, I'm feeling like I want to go the other way now. The purple and the shadows and the... tough one. All right. The purple and the shadows. It's not like I can't get another Rocky next year and do it the other way. So this is, I'm going to go back on the scales later. So I'm not, the overall value isn't going to be, I'm probably not even really going to go around there that much because I'm not doing the scales. I'm just doing the body forms. And I thought about doing the reverse scales where the crevices are lighter and the scale parts are darker. And Rocky would be a pretty good figure to do that on. I think it would be effective. Like, I don't know that that technique would work with every figure, but I think that the way the Rocky scales are sculpted, that it would work with him. I just decided that's not what I wanted to do. Today, at least. So yeah, I still feel... It's funny, like now that I'm here, pastel turns out to be even less saturated than I thought. Because that pink is just, it's too much, isn't it? It's too much. We gotta take it down. Okay, that might be too little. It's a fine line, apparently, that I am not walking very well. This is where I started, so that's pretty intense. And I had a little bit of this one. So there's a little bit of this color in here to make the shadow color. And it's not as pink now, but oh well, we're going to live with that. Will I be back at ReaperCon this year? Yes, I am making Easter Rocky because I believe in the Easter dragon. It just makes more sense. Dragons lay eggs, bunnies do not. Dragons can transport themselves magically in order to share said eggs with people. Bunnies cannot. I mean, I like bunnies, but Easter dragon. Easter dragon. Join me in the cult of Easter dragon. You know what, I'm just gonna be super random. Do a mix. And there's a big white part that got missed. But I don't, so there's like a mix of kind of wet and drying paint. So for good wet blending practices, I really should be backing off of here. I should not be over here at all. I should just go somewhere else and then address that later. If you have tried wet blending and it's just too too much stress, frenzy, how do you get anything anywhere in time? There is, and Reaper sells this, something called acrylic drying retarder that slows the dry time of the acrylic paint. So it doesn't like turn it into oil paint, which I've had people ask me if it turns into oil paint. It does not. But it gives you a longer working time. And when you're doing something like this, especially if you are not very practiced at doing it and you need a little extra time, or if you live in a dry climate, it can be a very effective tool. I used to use it a little more than I do. There's a kind of blending that I've studied where you kind of do this and then you use it on top. And it's a good system. I taught it at ReaperCon last year. And I'm so used to doing what I do that I don't end up doing it very much. This is why sometimes I've seen people say, oh, I shouldn't go, like if you have the opportunity to go to particularly like a weekend workshop, sometimes painters will go to different parts of the country and someone will set up a weekend workshop where you're spending like 2 or 3 days with the painter and you're painting like a bust or a creature or something over that time. And I'll hear people who aren't, very experienced or they don't think they're great painters and they're like, oh, I shouldn't go to that. I'm not good enough yet. In some ways, you're going to get more out of studying with other people the earlier you do it in your miniature painting career before you've built up a lot of your own habits that are really hard to suspend, to do something someone else's way or to shift what you're doing. I mean, not that you necessarily want to do, when you're at a class or a workshop, I think you do want to do things the way the person is showing you, because that's kind of what you're paying for, is to find out how they do things. So I think it's important to, listen to the demonstration, watch what they're doing before you jump in and start painting. At ReaperCon, I often do not give out paint until I'm like ready for people to start doing their thing, because it's really easy to get into automatic pilot and you just start doing what you always do. But if the point is to find out what I do, this is not going to help you. So you need to kind of like suspend what you do. But that doesn't mean that once you get home, you're just like, all right, I guess this is how I have to paint now if I want to paint like this person. No, that's not necessarily the case. You can adapt what they're doing to what you do. I mean, maybe you find it doesn't work for you at all, or maybe you adapt it. It depends, but you're going to be more adaptable if they do have a better way of doing things then you do a faster, more efficient, whatever you want to consider better. There's a lot of different definitions of better, in my opinion. That is easier before you've gotten set in your ways, as I have. I'm not getting too close to the belly scales because I think I'm going to need a better... This brush has got a pretty good hooky going on. I think I'm going to need a good... I mean, it's handy for some things. I can like get under his little butt rolls and stuff. But it does make it much less precise for precise things. So that I'm liking a lot. I think that works better. And I probably need to just go way more pale on the pink, maybe. I don't know. Oh, sorry, I touched the thing. Hey, Polly Schmazel. Oh, waiting with a party of 4. Welcome to Polly Schlemazel and Raiders. We haven't had a raid in a long time. This is exciting. I'm working on an Easter dragon, which is an opportunity to explore the challenges of painting with pastel colors, which is turning out to actually be slightly more challenging than I had expected. And that's fine. I like to screw up on camera so that I can try to fix things on camera and people can get an idea of how that goes as well. Because we are definitely people that know what they're doing, and I don't necessarily include myself among them, remember? It's not that we get stuff right all the time instantly and we just always know what to do. We just know how to fix it. And that's, I think, one of the nice things. But we don't. We're going to have ideas of how to fix it. We don't necessarily know. We're going to have a starting point for how to fix it. And I think that's one of the nice things about watching live stuff like Twitch is, I mean, I like watching, lesson style videos where someone's kind of like, okay, here's the point I'm explaining, and it's edited, and I'm only watching, a few minutes of them painting or whatever, but it cuts out all of this part where you don't, and then you may think that people don't make mistakes, and you may not, you're not really getting any instruction about, okay, well, how do you identify and try to fix mistakes? So I like to do that on this show a lot. This show is a lot of me screwing up and trying to make it better. It's almost the theme of the show. If not my life. It might be the theme of my life. Oh, and here I'm faced with the question. I think his little feet are the same color. I don't think we complicate my life to the degree where I'm going to change what color his little feet are. So I did go see the Dungeons and Dragons movie again this weekend. This time with my D&D group, which we actually Zoomed because two of the people live far enough away that, like, they don't live far away, but they live far enough away that they're not gonna want to be driving into the city, as it were, for D&D every week. And I mean, we started doing it during the pandemic, but we've continued doing it that way because it is a nice compromise for adults with schedules and problems, because then the other guy has to go pick up his kids at work or something half the time. So he'd have to leave like extra early if he was doing it at our house. So anyway, we met in person, which we rarely do, and we went to the movie, and that is a fun way to see it with the people you play with. I definitely recommend that. And I still enjoyed it the second time. I'm not one of those people who goes to see movies over and over again in the theater. My husband emphatically is. He would very much like it if I would do that more. But it was interesting to get a chance because there were a couple places where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to watch the main thing. I'm going to look around and see was there stuff that I didn't, pay attention to or notice or whatever the first time I saw it. And that was interesting because there were some things like that. But I'm pretty sure that the Mario movie just trounced it. I think it's too bad that movies with so much crossover audience, that there wasn't more space in between them. I'm kind of feeling like I need some of this yellow in the blue and purple parts. Also, when you experiment on camera, it makes me look better. Well, and that's so, it's like this idea that often, and when people see this, like before people used to see other people paint, this is all new. When I started painting like about 18, 19 years ago, and there were starting to be photos, nowhere near the quality that there are now, but video was just not very feasible. Like you literally had to hire a professional videographer with like a super expensive camera to be able to focus on this kind of thing. So there was very little of it. Am I correct? So when you go to a convention and take classes or do one of those workshop type things, that is when you would start seeing how other people paint. And it would often be a revelation that people who have super neat, precise end results, it's not necessarily that way along the way. And I would definitely, I think I'm a pretty neat painter and the end result looks precise. The on the way emphatically does not. I have very few qualms about getting paint on stuff that I don't care about because I haven't gotten there yet. Very few qualms. I just feel like if we're going for color variation, it needs even more color variation. It's not enough of that, but Easter Rocky bringing us our treats. I probably just should have left that until I'm working on the scales, but just was bugging me. I definitely also don't work optimally in terms of workflow. I'm not the painter to learn that from, alas. But I like that. I think that gives him, that brings out the dimension better. And it gives us now some pastel green over here. And get all the pastel colors by the time we're done, which was not remotely my intention, but still fulfills my brief of painting pastel colors. I'm not sure about his tum still though. I think I gotta go back into the tum and make that better. All right, so we're gonna give up on yellow being super yellow and go with peach. Just straight up. This, I'll put some of that in there to tone that down. And the light pink actually is a premixed color. It's Shellin Blush, which is one of the Pathfinder colors. We have several Pathfinder colors because this darker purple is the Ghoul Violet. Don't think any of the teals are Pathfinder colors. which is almost shocking. All right, that looks more pastel. I will take another pass at his tum-tum. I've actually already submitted my class topic, but since I think it would be wiser for me to wait until everything's approved. You know, I guess there's always a chance that they'll feel like there's too many of that topic or not enough of something else, and I might change what I'm doing. It's unlikely, but it's certainly possible. So I will not reveal my class topics. And I'm pretty sure that unless something comes up at his work, my husband will also be there running the board game area as usual. So if you have friends and family who aren't sure if they want to come because they're just not as into miniatures as you are, there are other things to do. There are role-playing games or board games. There's nerd shopping. There's, you know, Dallas and Denton itself for non-con related activities. So they will be able to find things to do. My husband will be happy to have more people to play with. You can also, you don't have to play games with my husband. You can, if you have a group of friends and you want to play a game, you can, it's like a library. You can take the game out and go sit somewhere else and then bring it back. Nexus Aquarian 0343 says adorable. I'm into the robot dragon thing. He's an Easter dragon. I guess maybe he's an Easter robot dragon. But the actual dragon is Rocky the Red, and there are 6 different poses of him that you can buy. So there's like one where he's annoyed because there's a dragonfly sitting on his tail, and there's another one where he's about to pounce. There's one where you can hold your brush. And his name is Rocky the Red, and I painted the ones in the store, and I painted them as instructed, red. But I've always thought it would be fun to paint him another color, and I guess I woke up and decided to paint him all of the other colors, but pastel, because it was Easter yesterday. And I didn't really do the egg thing or whatever, so this is how I'm going to celebrate all the springy sprongness and whatnot. I mean, apologies to those who are not in the northern hemisphere and are not experiencing spring, or those who are more north in the northern hemisphere and are just kind of pretending they're experiencing spring. We're very much in spring mode where I am. I think that's a little better. I don't know. I don't know anymore. But that's okay. So my pinks are drying out a little, even though since I don't have to move the palette as much now that I have palette cam, I was like, oh, I can put all the water in there, unlike normal. But I am not sure that it is staying as wet as I wanted. Oh, why are you here? Sorry, there's a little ant where this is the time of year. The downside of spring is the battling of the ants. Definitely not my favorite. But we shall emerge victorious. I think. I mean, I don't know. We have to do it every year, so I guess we're not exactly victorious. Even though we have solicited professional help, we're still having the battle of the ants. But we can call in reinforcements, so that's nice. I just want to get to the point where I like at least mostly like the tummy before I commit to all of the body parts, because it's going to be really challenging not to gunk things up with paint if I keep changing my mind. All right, I'm going to call that good enough for now. I can fix this scale more later if I want. There's a hole under the neck situation happening. But that is also a place that people aren't going to be able to look that much. So I'm probably going to live with it. But even though I'm painting pastel and I want everything to be nice and light and Eastery and candy and whatnot, I still need a little bit of stuff like lining and shading and other things that give definition. Because that's why we have to do all that stuff in the first place, is because we need to make things look more 3D. And just because I want it to be overall light in value doesn't mean that it doesn't need some help to look 3D. Quindy has very kindly provided a link to all of the Rocky poses. Gel tip. My first Reaper Con was last year, and I learned so many names, so I've been lurking and saying hi to folks so that I can properly greet and meet everyone this year. Oh, you are a better person than I am, because it's tough, because you've got the forum/Twitch name, the real name. Sometimes there's even another, maybe they didn't get the same name on Twitch as they got on Discord or whatever. I'm hopeless. I'm trying to put all that together. But the nice thing is that we wear tags, and most people write their real name and their handle on the tag, and this is very helpful to me. If real life could introduce name tags, I would be perfectly okay with that. My brain is not designed for the remembering of names, apparently. Can I remember obscure trivia facts, like how many golf balls are on the moon? Yes, I can. 3. But names are a whole other kettle of fish. Rocky and stuff like with fur are excellent to practice wet blending on, because, where you're seeing the lines a little more on these scales because they're super smooth, you see them much less over here because there's all that texture that breaks up the lines, so it fools the eye into not seeing where one little bit of paint meets another little bit of paint. So I definitely recommend a textured surface for beginning adventures into wet blending. I like that big, the warg? I think he's a warg that Jason Weeby did, which is now available in Bones. He's an excellent wet blending practice kind of figure. To go down to the smaller one. I am an artist alley, and I choose to add my Twitch name to my real name. That is a good move, thank you. I think I write both my names on my badge as a rule. Alas, my handwriting is not super amazing. think I've told the story before of how I was the second last person in class to get a pen when I was in elementary school. Your handwriting had to be kind of at a certain level, and you graduated to using a pen. And I'm pretty sure that the last few of us were kind of pity pens. She was just like, all right, whatever. Here's your pen. Move on. And I would not say that my handwriting has improved since then, because I started kind of print writing for speed of taking notes. And that did not make anything better. I mean, it did improve the speed of taking notes. Did not improve the legibility of said notes. Toes are kind of detail things. I should just come back to them later. I do not have to wet blend highlight on the toes at this time. I do have to put paint on all the parts. No white showing through. And that's the other thing when you're doing wet blending. This is true even if you were doing like, a brown animal fur to a tan animal fur. You can mix your bits in between to go over those transition points if they're not wet blending out prettily enough. And here I'm just trying to make the line look a little less liney. I want to get some shading because his legs are cylinders essentially, and a shiny paintbrush is going to do a more extreme version of it, but a cylinder tends to have the highlight, a vertical cylinder tends to have the highlight down the middle, and then it appears to go darker as it rolls away from us, which is exactly what's happening with his leg. So I want that purple shadow color to be on the sides of his leg at least a little, and then switch to the teal. Right now I'm working with two of the best colors ever, so teal and purple. Join our cult. Does anyone have any fun Easter stories they'd like to share? Things they did over the weekend? Delicious candy that they have discovered? I am still in mourning about the cancellation of Cadbury Mini Cream Eggs white chocolate version. I'm not alone either. I went over on their webpage just to see, because they still have the webpage up for that candy. And basically it was just a bunch of people expressing their sadness about the no longer existence of this candy, and then some poor rep saying, yeah, I'll let someone know. Please calm down. So I did confirm that, alas, my candy is not. Because sometimes they, like M&M's will do flavors for holidays that you can only get at Target or you can only get over here or whatever. So I was double checking that it wasn't just that Walgreens wasn't able to stock that, but that it was really no longer available, to my great dismay. Okay, so I think you could see how much more intensely that color laid down, and that would be because I probably need to add some water to that. The colors with white seem to, they start out thicker often, but they seem to thicken up faster both on the palette and in the bottle. So that's part of the fun of working with pastel colors right there. Anyone else planning to come to ReaperCon and hang out with us and play games and take painting classes and enter the MSP Open, which is very welcome to all kinds of miniatures. I mean, not just Reaper, like all kinds of miniatures, even things that you made yourself, 3D printed, all that's cool. It's also very open to different styles and different levels of painting. So you are running against yourself. It's a medal style contest where, you know, the judges look at your work and assess it, you know, as, is this the best version of this that it could be, kind of thing. And then you get whatever medal is deemed appropriate. And it doesn't matter if we want to give out, you know, 500 golds, we can give out 500 golds. There's no, only X number of people get a thing. We do what we want. That's not at all true. The judging, and you can go read about these online. I think it's at reapercon.com. There's an MSP section, and you can read kind of the criteria for each category. There's like a breakdown even of, so if you're looking at open, where sculpting and, you know, fancy basing and stuff like that are considered, as well as paint. So something like assembly and workmanship has a higher weight there than it does in painters, which is, you know, primarily about the paint. Very encouraging contest. I want people to have fun. You can come get feedback from the judges after the contest. If you are someone who, I mean, if you're just putting your stuff in so people can see it on the table, that is a-okay and very cool. We're all miniature fanatics. I mean, okay, except for the friends and family I mentioned that you may have dragged along with you. So we just like looking at stuff. Like there's a table, the tables are out and things are not behind glass. So you can kind of get a good view of all the miniatures. And if you're less interested in the contest than just being able to, you know, show your forum or Discord friends, hey, here's that thing I told you that I was working on. Here's what it looks like. That is perfectly fine. I think there was a person last year actually who put their work in and asked that it not be considered for a medal. And we respected that. It's also possible to put your work in anonymously, but the things are judged with teams of 3. So even if, you know, you paint something blue, and I hate blue, I don't hate blue that much, by the way. Let's just be clear on my level of dislike of blue. But if for some reason you feel like an individual is not going to be impartial to you, the way it usually goes is that one of the judges, like maybe you're in their Patreon, and they've given you advice, including advice on the piece that you entered and you're being judged on. When that happens, like if we have advised on something, if it's work by someone we like really like, and this very rarely happens, but I know people think it happens, if it's work by people we maybe don't love, we recuse ourselves, and there are guest judges. Well, not guest, I forget what we call it. There's a name for it, but there are floater judges who step in and take over. Also, if like I usually judge painters and I usually enter painters, so I can't judge my own thing because that would be weird. So I go away, and the fill-in judge comes and looks at my miniature. And then I come back. It's an excellent opportunity to run to the bathroom. But yeah, it's not like the old style contests that were popular at gaming focused conventions where, you know, there's like a competitive strain to gaming. I mean, that is what it is. Some of us are competitive. And those kinds of contests tend to be like top 3. And maybe there'll be like a judge's choice or a first cut or something like that. But if you aren't one of those top 3, you don't really get much information about like where you are relatively, if you're improving over how you did last year, that kind of thing. And then it's, you know, it is competitive, and that's honestly, I don't participate in those kinds of contests very much anymore. I enjoy like looking at stuff in them, but for me, like the risk reward trade-off, it just doesn't fit the bill for me anymore. I don't want to be trying to second guess that this thing is popular and this thing is what the company just came out with, and so it's more likely to win, and people like this, and I'm like, I just want to do what I want to do. So I'd rather go to an open system where I can do what I want to do, and it gets assessed on the level of, what it is. I like the open system a lot. And that was, I was participating in some open contests before Reaper did it, because it's the system that people who paint historical miniatures primarily use. Ed went and talked with some of the people who developed and maintained that system, and got an understanding of how it works before designing the rules for the MSP Open. And it fits the vibe of ReaperCon very well, I think, because we want to be a happy, welcoming, encouraging place where we all just hang out and geek out about our awesome hobby. I'm liking the teal purple with a little bit of yellow. I still don't know about that pink thing. I might have to do the white glaze. That'll be super fun. So Quindy has shared the link to the MSP Open and also to ReaperCon in general if you just want to get tickets to the con and do the gaming and stuff like that. Gel Tip is coming again this year and is going to do so many more activities than I did last year. Make sure you leave some time for just hanging out with friends and decompressing, I guess, a little bit, absorbing things you've learned in classes or experiences you had in games, because it is definitely possible to overschedule yourself. Gray Mouser. It helps if you don't break people's models and then don't tell them. There are occasionally issues with stuff like that at a contest, and there have been at the MSP Open. I think I had my first incident last year. Usually it's because someone hasn't attached something. Like, a very common thing is that someone will, like, say you bring a wooden base like this and you put the guy on it and you've just rested the guy on it, or you're just using like a little bit of blue tack or something. The judges are trained to pick your piece up by the base so that we aren't touching your paintwork and getting our greasy, I mean, not that we have greasy hands, but you know what I mean. Like, we're trying to not damage your figures. So if you do something like that, you need to put out a little sign that says, miniature is not, glued together. It's just, pieced together, stuff like that. Even then, there will occasionally be incidents. One of the first contests I went to when I got my miniature back, it was a lady with the skirt, and there was just like this big chip in the back of the skirt. Like, it was down to the metal. It was like, I have no idea what happened. Things get moved around on trays. Maybe there was like a real spiky guy that was next to it, and it pulled up the paint. It is a risk, but I mean, I think that's the only incident I've had that wasn't related to me bringing the miniature, transporting the miniature. I made one miniature that had a dangling chain, which I painted, but then the chain's moving back and forth. So every time I took that to a show, there was like a thing I had to repaint. And then the thing at the end could bang parts of it. So I would have to wrap that in a little separate piece of something so that it wouldn't, if it banged around, like even when you have one of those transport boxes where like you attach the miniature to the base of it through magnets or something else, and so you don't have to put bubble wrap and nothing's touching it. Even with that kind of thing, like just the airplane motion would have been enough to make this little chain move around. So I probably won't do that on a miniature again anytime soon, because that was an enormous pain in the butt. Also, not measuring your transport case before you complete designing your diorama base miniature thing. I had one that was like just a little too tall, and I could only transport her by taking the shelf out of my case and sticking her to the bottom. So the bottom's now like all wrecked up because of the tape. So I've learned things. I talked about this, I think not last year but the year before, but we got the good camera. I could show you these miniatures that I made mistakes with again, and you can probably actually see them this time. Babatuk 4, there's been a lot of discontent around Golden Demon recently. Yeah, I've been seeing some of that, and I have to admit I was kind of puzzled. In a way. I mean, I totally understand why people weren't happy with it, but that has been kind of the approach of a competitive environment. I mean, Adepticon is a competitive environment. The games are very competitive there. So it just kind of was like, what? It was just weird, because the other thing that was strange about it is I'm sure there are differences between how Crystal Brush worked and how the Golden Demon works at Adepticon, but not massive differences. Like, the main difference is that Crystal Brush had a component where the top 10 or so of each category were posted online, and half of your score, I guess, essentially came from votes from people who voted online, and half of it came from the judges that were on site. So that is definitely very different than Golden Demon, but it's still essentially like, so then if you got your picture online, you were first cut. Like, that way, in those kinds of terms, it was the same amount of information. If it was possible to get feedback from Crystal Brush judges, I was completely unaware of this, and I know the person who was the organizer. So maybe it just didn't occur to me, or maybe the people who are feeling like they weren't able to get feedback from the judges knew the judges previously, and they don't know these ones. But it's like, if you come in like me and you don't know any of them, that is not a difference in experience. I think it is largely like this idea of the open system of acknowledging people's effort and achievement at every level, instead of just saying you either win or you lose. I think that idea is spreading and gaining popularity, which I'm okay with. I think that's great. It was just some of the people that I've seen who aren't happy about it seemed like people who were more into the competitive environment. But I think I think maybe the other component of it is, I can't speak for everyone, but just things I see in the news, we're all a little fragile after the past few years. Like it was a trauma to us collectively and individually, and I think people just can't, they can't withstand the same things that they could before, or they don't want to withstand the same things that they could before. And I totally get that. I know that I'm not as resilient as I was, I don't think. And I was not very resilient. Resiliency is not a word that people would look at me and use, I don't think. So I don't have any problem if it changes the environment. It was just, I was looking at a video just yesterday, and I've been following a conversation. I feel like that's way more pastel now. But his tum-tum just still doesn't look right, does it? What time is it? All right, I got 8 minutes. I mean, I didn't finish the teal thing, but I can do more. I don't know that I could finish the teal thing in 8 minutes. So I'm going to do the scary. I'm going to do the scary thing that I said, that you can do a light colored glaze. So normally when I do a glaze, you're getting like an intense color, like, I don't have a lot here right now, but let's see what I got. An intense color like this teal. And you're going over something to bump up the saturation. It's like I painted it, it wasn't blue enough. So I'm going to go over it with this transparent but very intense blue. Is one reason you glaze. You may glaze with a similar color to, like me, or maybe I'd pick this as my base tone and I glaze everything because you can see the lines. And if you do a glaze, it's kind of like putting a filter in front of the camera, you know, Vaseline lens, that old joke about how it makes people look younger. And that kind of unifies, reduces the visible texture. But what I want to do is a glaze that will pastelize, increase the pastel amount that's happening on there. I'm thinking of this pink, but I don't know. Maybe this purple, or I should just do straight up white. I think I'm going to do the purple. I don't want to take too much color. Gel tip. I love the rubric system and the fact that I can get real feedback. Yeah, feedback is huge. It really is huge. I mean, I think even if you're doing a top 3, if you can give people feedback, that's, I mean, for a lot of people, they're more interested in that than, I mean, okay, if you can win, you want to, but I think most of us don't go to a contest like Golden Demon with the attitude that they're going to win. I certainly wouldn't. But the feedback can be invaluable. Sorry, I'm looking for my trashy brush. So as ever, I want to test this. So I always test glazes. I usually show you all how I test washes, but I often can tell just from, you know, in the little dish how it's doing stuff, if it is correct. But glazes, because my risk here is that I'm gonna wipe out too much of what I did. I'm going to lose all those color transitions, or I'm just going to turn it, you know, that pinky color, and then I just have to start over. And my goal with this is so I can stop painting that section and move on to other parts. So what I like to do is get a piece of paper with text and paint it over. And this really does look like colored water because it's not working. I mean, it's just darkening it. The other thing is this is very light. So if it was covering over the text, I would know. Let's look at some previous examples. So, you know, that's not even a wash level. I can sort of see the colors under there, but that may not even be a layer. This is a good layering level because I have clear deposit of color, but I also can clearly see the text. And then this one is more like a glaze. That one is more like a glaze, where I mean, kind of colored water is the right way to think about it. That one's definitely a glaze. So, but what I can do, but testing on a white paper is then, it does that test my things very well. But I have colors here, so I can also test on these colors. And that actually is clearly not enough. So there, like it shifted it just a tiny little bit lighter, but I probably want it to look lighter than that. Apparently Ashen Rose is not a very potent color, despite looking like it has a lot of white in it. Well, I'm not sure why I put that paper away, because I still have to test, don't I? So unlike a wash, I don't want it just, you know, gooped up with paint. Like, you know, massive amounts of paint are going to come off. That's the big difference between a glaze and a wash is, for me, it's partly the transparency level, but also it's control. So I want to get stuff off of that brush so that I am making a controlled stroke. Back here. Wow, this is, okay, we're just going to put a bunch in and then just add water if that's too much. Doing it in the other direction doesn't seem to be working out for me, but is how I would normally do it. Maybe I'll just add a little smidge of yellow too, so that it kind of reflects both of the things. This is probably going to be too opaque, but let's find out. Because what I want to do is essentially like a camera filter. I want to put one thin layer of paint over the whole surface and just lighten it slightly, like is happening there. And if it's not light enough, I can do it again. But if I go too opaque now, I can't take it off because it's acrylic paint. Once it dries, it dries, which is nice, but also risky. So this is visual mixing, or yeah, visual mixing essentially. So instead of mixing more paint that I add more white into to make it pastel, I'm putting white over what I already have, and the two are mixing together visually. And I believe that it is helping. I think it will need another coat. I need to let that dry completely. But I think that is making me feel better about life. I don't know if it's perfect, but it's better. I will probably put these colors down on a little card so that I have some notion of the colors that I used next time. I probably will want to continue with Rocky next time because I love Rocky. And I'm kind of, has been indeed an interesting challenge of how do I do pastel and do all these color shifts and stuff. But I would also like to do the owlbear stripes at some point. And maybe do the sculpting thing like I talked about. So I have some ideas for the next few weeks. I hope that you will join me. And if you can't make it live, I mean, the Twitch keeps stuff for 2 weeks. And then Reaper posts it on their YouTube channel, and every one of the shows has a playlist. So if you just want to catch up on what happened on Reaper Live on Thursday, which I should go do because I was not able to watch live, you can just go to the Reaper Live playlist and you go down to the last one, and that will be the most recently uploaded video. I mean, it takes a few days to go from Twitch to YouTube. I believe Quindy is why that happens, because Quindy is awesome. But you can get caught up on All the Reaper doings that you may have missed. And there are lots. I mean, we had a raid today. I don't know if any of the raiders have been here before or if they are still here now. But Reaper has a full schedule of shows. I mean, not like 24-hour full, but there's stuff all week, I guess is what I'm getting at. And who is the person who designed most of these paints that I'm using? She designed the paint lines. Paints every day, Monday through Friday at 11:30 Texas time, which is Central. Okay, maybe Texas doesn't even have just one time because it is a freaking enormous state. But Reaper is Central for sure. If you come to ReaperCon, you will be in Central time. Then we have, I'm on Mondays. Luca, who is an Italian painter, paints Wednesday afternoons. And do I remember the time? I 100% do not remember the time. I'm going to say 1:30. I'm going to throw that out there, and then Quinny's going to go, no, you dummy, I told you this 6 times. It is not 1:30. And the Crow's Nest is shifting format a little, and they're not going to air as often on Tuesday. Or no, they switched to Monday evenings, that's true. They're not going today, are they, Quinny? I feel like somebody would have told me, but that's not necessarily true. So they used to be Tuesdays, but now they are Monday nights, and they would immediately follow me if they were doing the things, but I do not know if they're doing the things. Quinny says not that she knows of, because she would be telling me to like wrap it up if they were. I should be like, nope, it's going to be someone else's turn. Get off. Get off. Let them have some time to rule the Twitch airwaves of Reaper. And then Thursdays is Josh. Oh God, my memory's complete. Foreman? I'm going to say Josh Foreman. Quinny's just like, oh my God. I used to write this down. so I didn't make Quinny's job quite as hard as I am right now. And his show is called The Crafty Creative because he does like all kinds of stuff. He makes sculptures and maquettes and scenery and terrain, and he paints. He just does like all the things. Then Reaper Live is the show that you probably already know about because that's where you can win cool things and also find out like what's coming out in the world of Reaper, what cool miniatures await us. And then as we get closer to ReaperCon, that is also going to be a great place to find out news and views about ReaperCon. And then Friday afternoon at a time, am I pretending that I remember? I'm going to go with 3 or 3:30 is Reaper Land, which is like a fun community-oriented show that John and Dave do. So I'm going to throw, this must be dry now. I'm going to throw another coat of, well, first I'm going to mix it. So Reaper paint, you can thin it down like a lot with just water. And it rarely separates. But when I've got that much water in a paint and I let it sit for 5 minutes, it's probably not a terrible plan to stir it, just so I know. And then I'm doing this. I mean, I might do it on here if I'm trying to set a better example. This is to test the paint load. So like I showed you before, like that's runny. And what I'm doing when the brush goes off camera is I'm rubbing it on this sponge, which is a damp sponge instead of a dry paper towel. You can also use a damp paper towel. But then because my goal is to really control this paint, I'm going to even do a test stroke. Often I'll do it on the base to make sure that the amount of paint that is coming off of here, I can make it one thin, even coat. And it's not going to go blooping all over the place. This is the same kind of thing that I would do for painting eyes or freehand or other things where precision is important. I'm spending more time loading the brush and checking the load and making sure that I can control what's happening than I am actually applying the paint as a rule. So that is much more pastel. I will have to make a mental note, or I mean, I could just, now that I know that works, I could use these colors and paint this part and then just do that thing again. And if I decide that the teal and the purple are too intense, I can do that thing. But I don't think I do, because I haven't done the scales. The scales are going to lighten everything up. I like the teal and purple part a lot, actually. All right, House of X is every now and then on Fridays, and I believe a recent one I saw, they said they had talked about trying to be a little more, a little less occasional than they had been. Aaron has a pretty demanding schedule, and he goes to like a ton of cons. This is a damp sponge. This is just a kitchen sponge. This one looks kind of funky because I needed new ones. They eventually get like stiff enough with the acrylic resin. Like I rinse it out after, but even so, they eventually get stiff enough that they don't absorb very well. But I could only get like wavy sponges, so I cut the waves off because I also use these. So this little palette that I have here, I have bigger versions of this. And if I want to preserve paint, so if I wanted to keep this paint until next week to use with you guys, I could. Not here on this so-called wet palette. I would get this super wet and put it over here if I made the paint there. And if I check this every day and keep my sponges wet and add a little bit of water in there if necessary, I can keep this paint a week and use it. And like it's not gunky and I'm just doing touch-ups. I mean, actually use it. So when I want to keep paint, I use the reverse wet palette. This is just to keep it in good condition while I'm working, especially since I have extra lights on during this time. And I am overtime, so I'm going to leave him the way he is. I hope everyone has some delicious Easter chocolate to munch on. If you didn't get any then, I'm guessing it's probably on sale now, so it's an excellent time to run out to the store and get some amazing chocolates. Hold on, and I will switch to the other view. Get rid of some lights. Same rules apply. Both of those shows have cats to herd. That's House of X and The Crow's Nest. And what it actually is those people have lives and commitments beyond what I do. So they are not able to keep as regular a schedule. Because Michael has to travel for work. And I mean, essentially, if Aaron's going to cons, he's also traveling for work. But that is what we have so far. I'm pretty sure Justin is working on getting some new things. We do not do role-playing on Friday anymore. The Frank from Nightheart Gaming moved, and he's not sure. He's trying to figure out a way to get enough internet to do what we do, because it's like six streams have to come into him, and then he puts it out again. It's like a higher demand of internet than you would think that it is. So that is why we have not been able to do that. And we're all pretty bummed about it, actually. We miss role-playing with each other. We miss finding out what's happening in our campaign. So we're hoping that Frank's going to find a way, but currently the Reaper Errant role-playing game is on hiatus. If you hadn't seen it and you want to see what Reaper artists are like role-playing, which is dorky and goofy, you can, all of the past episodes are archived on the YouTube channel. And Frank is really good at making something self-contained, but then also we kind of had a continuing story. Like, I have no idea how he did it. His timing was always really good, that we finished up in about this time, and he would make something so if someone popped on and they hadn't seen it before, they could get the gist of what was happening without too much, previously on Reaper Errant kind of deal. But then he also was developing, an ongoing story that kept us very engaged and trying to figure out what was going on. So, because he's like one of those like really good DM people. And we had all this like cool terrain and miniatures. So if you just want to look at cool terrain and miniatures, you can go over to that playlist as well. But I will, Grey Mouse is saying he's an awesome GM, and he has his own channel. I don't know if anything's archived there because Twitch isn't amazing at that. Like, you can only keep so much or for so long. I don't know all the details. But so I think you can have like a few things that are always there. But I guess the sheer volume of stuff, like there's not enough hard drives in the world, I suppose. But anyway, I'm going to let Queenie find us a raid, which my guess is going to be It's Art of Mike Disney, because he's very consistent in twitching at this time. But you never know what Queenie's going to do. She has all the power. I have no idea how you do these raid things and the technical whatnots. Something I should figure out, I guess. But I mean, not for Reaper. Reaper would not allow me the power to put things on raids. I think I do have the power to put links in chat, which I have been careful not to misuse. It's just hard to do that while I'm also painting. So Quindy is very kind and helps me out. And I didn't have the power originally. That they had to make sure that I wasn't going to go rogue and break all the Twitch rules first, I guess, before I was allowed the awesome power. So I will, oh, no, we haven't got it right yet. Oh, Reaper Challenge League. That is a way that, you know, you can encourage yourself to paint. There's some cool challenges in there, so go check out that link. And then hang on for the raid, which is going to be Art of Mike Disney. So say hi to him, spread the Reaper love, and I'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.